All right, hello and welcome back to the Fit40 Podcast, where we simplify exercise and nutrition for busy people over 40 so they can improve their health and feel amazing. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach for people over 40 since 2015. And today we have an awesome topic. We are going to be talking about keeping up with the kids, top exercises for pain-free parenting. So I'll give you my top 5 exercises that I think every parent should be doing just to make sure that they can keep up with their kids and make the memories that they want to make without having to be on the sidelines or constantly be going back to their doctor or physio or physical therapist trying to solve this pain that never, ever gets better. All right, now before we go into that, real quick, hit that pause button. Go and hit subscribe or follow wherever you are watching or listening so that way you do not miss another episode, because we got episodes coming every single week on, I was going to say on the daily, but it's on the weekly, okay? 1 per week. I used to do more, but now it seems like everybody seems to like that 1 per week flow so you don't miss anything. So be sure that you're subscribed or following so that way you keep getting notified when the new episodes drop, okay? Now, let's get into it. First off, the first exercise that I think every single parent should be good at is what is called hinging, okay? Basically, this is the idea of picking stuff up and putting it back down on the ground. Okay, this is things like RDLs or deadlifts. Now, they get a bad rap because a lot of people do deadlifting incorrectly. They go way too heavy, way too fast. They don't maintain a proper brace throughout the entire movement. And then because people do that without proper guidance and a professional teaching them how to do it in the right way, where you're feeling it through the glutes and the hamstrings and your abs rather than your lower back, people get hurt all the time. They get herniations, and then they go to their doctor and their doctor doubles down and is like, yeah, this is a bad exercise. When in reality, they should just stick to medicine. They should stick to surgery, whatever they do, and let the movement professionals handle this one, because it really comes down to understanding how to do it correctly, because avoiding this movement doesn't keep you out of pain. It doesn't guarantee to keep you out of pain. And it puts you in a more vulnerable position to potentially hurt yourself later, because if you're not practicing it, if you're not doing it correctly and you're not learning how to do it in a way that allows you to stay pain-free, anytime you're going to pick something up, you're risking potentially pissing something off, whether it's your erectors, your QL, that muscle to the side on your lower back, or something else. So the best way to potentially avoid any type of pain while bending over and picking something up and not throwing out your back is mastering the hinge pattern. So doing things like a kettlebell RDL. This is one of my favorites to start people off on. Basically, you just get comfortable with the idea of bringing a weight down and picking it up. And I like to do it in a way where they're against the wall. So you really get the feeling of what it's like to push your hips back rather than to just go straight down, because the hinge is it feels more like a forward to back rather than an up and down motion. It's basically you're reaching your butt back to the wall as the kettlebell is dropping down, because as your hips start to bend, you're naturally going to lower your body down to the ground, because like with a squat, for example, that's going to come from your knees shooting forward, but in a hinge, it's from your butt going backward. And what this does is it biases your hamstrings and your glutes, and you use your core to maintain stability through your upper body the entire time. So your upper body's really not moving at all. It's just those hips going back to the wall. Your knees are going to bend a little bit, but not shoot forward, and then you stand back up. When you do that, that allows you to engage all these muscles that are going to help you when you go to pick up your kid, when you pick them up from the ground, or in whatever way that you do that. Because I'm not saying you should pick your kid up this perfectly exact way. What I'm saying is you do it this way to strengthen up those muscles as strong as you possibly can get them in a proper range of motion when you're in the gym, so that way you're more bulletproof when you're doing it in an awkward way when you're at home. But you can also prepare for that too. So you can work your way up the list as far as how to progress the movement in a way that makes you more durable for life. So you can go from a kettlebell RDL, where you're only going down to about knee level, to a kettlebell deadlift. That's where you go all the way down to the floor. So if your kid is like laying on the ground, you can confidently just go down, pick them up, and stand. And then there's the trap bar. So if you want to get heavier weights on there, so that one of the best ways to reduce your risk for injury is to be so strong that certain things feel so light that it doesn't tax your body at all. So if you are able to lift like your body weight in a trap bar deadlift, you can confidently pick up a 30-pound toddler and be like, well, this feels like nothing. Another thing you could do is single leg deadlift, because a lot of times when you're picking a kid up or you're bending over to pick something up, it's not, okay, we're going to set both feet shoulder width apart or hip width apart. We're going to push our butt back and bend over and grab it. No, you're going to do it on one leg forward, maybe one leg back. And when you do that with single leg deadlift, whether you do a kickstand version where your back foot is still on the ground, but it's not really getting a whole lot of weight on it, or you're swinging that leg back so it's like you're balancing, then that'll help you get ready for a motion like that. Or single leg deadlift is also great for if you live, I know, in icy areas. I had an instance like this when I was training clients back in New Jersey. I slipped on the ice and my one foot swung up and the other foot stayed on the ice, and I maintained my balance. I'm like, honestly, that's single leg deadlifts right there. But with kids, you might slip on their toys or something like that and be put in a compromising position where you're like, oh my God, this could really hurt me. And by doing stuff like single leg deadlifts, maybe you get your body to a place where it's resilient enough to handle that. And then there's also things like crossbody kettlebell deadlifts. So like imagine your feet are hip width and you're standing normally. You're going to put a kettlebell on the side of your foot. You're like basically right next to your ankle, and then reach with the opposite hand. So let's say your kettlebell is at your right foot. You're going to grab it with your left hand, bring it across your body and stand up. Then put it down next to your left ankle, grab it with your right hand and stand up. And doing that across your body now incorporates this rotational component. So that way, when you're, again, picking up the kids at a weird angle, you're like, okay, my body has been exposed to this. It's not really that foreign to me, so I can do this. I got this, no problem. So those are my favorite hinges. That's number one. Number two is squatting. Now, the easy example here is when you're in those kids chairs that are tiny, 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 and you got to stand back up. I'm sure many parents right now are kind of chuckling a little bit, thinking about how hard it is getting up and down from those kids chairs if you even try to sit down in them in the first place. So that's essentially a squat. Now, another thing that this could be present in is tending to your kid when they have an injury, or maybe they're sad, like something happened and you're trying to get to like their eye level. That's not always the easiest things to do. And you can do it with a squat. You could do it by going down to a knee, but even when you're down on a knee, that is essentially a lunge. So still in that squatting pattern. So what we can do to get ready for these types of movements are things like goblet squat. That's like square one, where you hold a dumbbell or a kettlebell at your chest and you sit down, stand up. And if you want to make sure you're going low enough, then you can go to a box or a bench. Or if you're doing at-home workouts, you could go to the couch, you could go to a chair, or if you feel like you can handle it, because it is an extreme range of motion sitting into the kids' chairs, but you can literally do that with a weight, sit down to their chair and stand it up. That way you're like, hey, I did this with 20 pounds in my hand the other day. I could do it body weight, no problem. Another thing you could do when it comes to squat patterns is a single arm racked squat. So holding a dumbbell, thumbs up, there we go. Sorry, I'm filming on the iPhone and you guys get the emojis with this. But you can also hold a single arm racked squat where you hold a dumbbell at your shoulder, kind of like a butler hold, like you're holding a tray for something, but you're holding that dumbbell at your shoulder. Or you could hold a kettlebell where it sits on the back of your hand and in your elbow crease, and you hold it right there. What this does is it gets you ready for just carrying stuff on the one shoulder. So let's say you have a big old backpack that you have, or like a baby bag, or let's say you're getting ready to go to the hospital or something, and you have this gigantic bag like that you're ready to bring with you, then you're ready for that. It's not going to be taxing. It's going to be like, okay, I've been able to hold like 30, 40 pounds on this one side. This 20-pound backpack is going to feel like nothing. And then last but not least on my list is a single leg squat. So like I mentioned before, like lunging or split squats or anything where you're getting up from one leg, where before maybe you're tending to your kid, maybe you're in a compromising position like I mentioned with the single leg RDLs. Getting good on one leg with a squat and a RDL is extremely valuable for many, many reasons. And the only thing that really separates the squat from the hinge, because if you're wondering, these kind of sound similar, is what the knees and hips do. So more so the knees. So if the knees are traveling forward and they're bending a lot, that would be a squat because it's biasing the front of your legs. You're going to feel it mostly in your quads. And then the hinge is where most of the bending comes from your hips because your hips are shooting backwards, but your knees aren't really traveling forward. They're staying put, but they're bending as they stay put, if that makes sense. It's easier to see this visually, but I'm trying to paint the picture as best I can for podcast purposes. Next is carry. Now, this should be a pretty obvious one. Like you're carrying your kids all over the place up to a certain age. So the most direct way to train this is a goblet carry. You hold something at your chest, kind of like if you were holding your kid right at your chest, and you walk around for 30 to 60 seconds. And ideally, you want to bring the weight up and up and up and up and do more over time. And like, let's say you're getting ready for a trip to Disney World or something where you know it's going to be prolonged. You are going to be walking around with your kid for a long, long time. Then you could practice longer durations if you want and really get super hyper specific on it. You can also do things like farmer carries, like single or double arm, because, for example, when you're holding that baby car seat carrier, that plastic one with the handle, that is essentially a single arm farmer carry. So you want to get really good at that. But like, let's say you're holding two kids, maybe you had twins. Okay, you have one in each hand. That's a double arm farmer carry. Or you have your kid in one hand and groceries in the other. That's a farmer carry too. But if they're two different weights, you could do what's called an offset carry. So you could do different weights in each hand and then switch at 30 seconds. Or maybe you could have one at your shoulder, that rack carry that we mentioned, like with the squats, that rack position. You could have one weight up top, one weight down low, and that's another version of an offset carry where you do 30 seconds, one high, one low, and then 30 seconds opposite, one high, one low. So if you're carrying a bag and your kid, or you're carrying your kid and your groceries, like you're just ready for life. You can handle whatever comes your way. Next is overhead carry. This is more for fun time, like when you're playing the airplane game or whatever, just getting used to holding stuff over your head. And all you do is hold one or two arms over your head with a dumbbell or a kettlebell and walk down and back, or stay in place, or march, or whatever you want to do, just as long as you get used to moving while holding. That's the real key thing there. Next is push press. So for anybody who doesn't know what a push press is, essentially you have a weight at your shoulders, whether it's two dumbbells, two kettlebells, a landmine, a medicine ball, and you squat down. And as you stand up, you push your hands over your head, basically like you're throwing your kid up in the pool. So this could be in the pool, in the ocean, or wherever. Maybe you're in a ball pit, whatever. You can practice this with dumbbells where you have one at each shoulder and press them up, or you could do a single arm and do it that way, or you could do it with a landmine. So the barbell wedged into a corner in a landmine attachment. So that's a little bit more shoulder friendly for anybody who has a shoulder impingement, or maybe just have an old shoulder injury. The landmine is very nice in those situations. And then there's also medicine ball. If you want to launch your kid into orbit and just really send them, if you have a medicine ball that's like 20-ish pounds and you get really good at throwing that thing, your kid is going to be bragging to his friends like, my dad or my mom can toss me, like, and you'll be that cool parent in the group. Like, everybody wants to be around this parent because they're the ones that are super duper strong. So something to work for. And then last but not least is cardio. There's two different types. There's high intensity interval training, HIIT training, for anybody who's heard of that. And then there's LISS, LISS, low intensity steady state. So HIIT is great for short bursts when you're running around with your kids and maybe you're playing tag or something, or you're racing to the car or something like that. HIIT is great for that. So doing intervals of 10 seconds as fast as you can on an exercise bike, and then resting for whatever's left of the minute, or 30-30s, or minute on, minute off. Stuff like that is really good. I like the 1-to-1 ratio, but if you're really just starting with interval training and you haven't really done any conditioning since maybe high school or maybe even ever, I would say what you do is like 10 to 20 seconds of a short burst as fast as you can, and then take as much rest as you need to actually catch your breath and calm your heart rate down a little bit. I like aiming for somewhere in that ballpark of like zone 2. So somewhere around like 60% ish of your max heart rate. Or if you want to get more specific, you could go with like straps and things like that tell you when you're in zone 2. But basically, if you want to get a ballpark idea, like let's say you have an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or something like that, take your max heart rate. So you can estimate by taking 220 and subtracting your age. So let's say you're 40, subtract 220 minus 40, that's 180, and then 60% of that. And then look on your watch and just wait until you get to that number. For a lot of people, like I measure everybody's out in here, it usually ends up being in that ballpark of 130-ish beats per minute, depending on your age. So if you want to just say, hey, once I hit 130 beats per minute, I'll start my next set and then do that, go for it. And then you can measure your progress based on how many rounds you can get in a certain amount of time. So like, let's say you go to the gym and you're like, okay, I did all my strength stuff. I did my hinging, my squatting, my push pressing. I did my carries like Brian told me to do. Now I'm going to do like 10 minutes of high intensity interval training. I'm going to get as many rounds in as I can. And every week you're going to get better at recovering faster. So you're going to be able to do more rounds. So that way, you know, hey, I'm getting better at this. And then LISS, low intensity steady state. That's the traditional, like we're going for a long bike ride or a walk or a jog or swimming for an extended period of time, stuff like that. And this is great for when you're out on vacation or like for special events, like say you go on a family hike or a long walk with your kids or a long bike ride, or you go sightseeing and you're on foot. You don't want to be that person that's like, hold on, I got to take a break. Like you want to be that person that's leading the pack, that's saying, hey, let's check this out. Let's check that out. That's what LISS is for. So if you can, make time during the week. So let's say you're aiming for the standard of 2 to 3 days a week where we're hitting our strength training. Make 1 or 2 days out of the week for low intensity steady state. So you get let's say 2 strength training days. Then you get another 1 day of just low intensity steady state where you go for a long bike ride or you go for a long walk and you're checking that box. And for a lot of people, that'll be plenty to get you to a place where you can be this version of yourself that is this super active, super involved parent that can physically be there and be making all these incredible memories with their kids. So that being said, I hope that this all helped. These were my top 5. Just a quick little recap. We have our hinging movements, squatting movements, carry, push press, and cardio. If you can incorporate that in your training plan, you will feel like $1,000,000 and you will be that cool parent, not the one that's saying, I'll catch up later. Okay, so if you want to see what that's all about and you want to do it in person with me and have me personally guiding you, that's what we do at Fit40 Personal Training and Nutrition in Greenville, North Carolina. So if you're in the area, stop on by. Or if you want to join in on Zoom, that works too. Either way, all you have to do is set up a intro call by clicking the link in the show notes or description, wherever you're watching or listening. And then we'll hop on a quick 10-minute call, talk about your goals, talk about what exactly you need, answer any questions, and see if it's the right fit. And if it is, you could join us and get started kicking ass immediately. All right. So go ahead if you need to click that link. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next episode. But until then, like I just said, go kick some ass. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.